Hi, everybody. I think let's. It usually takes like a little bit while it connects to all the LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram at the same time. But meanwhile we can uh, start with a short introduction. Still, like people will see in with 1 minute or 2 minutes delay, like everything. So.
Sure.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you to join this webinar of Silicon Valley Certification Hub. We are here with three great minds, and we are really happy that we are here. So here we have Dr. Colleen McClure. She's assistant professor of distribution at the College School of Business at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Also, we have Dr. Red Epler, Assistant Professor of Marketing at the Strum College of Business at Old Dominion University. And Dr. Diva Ranga Rajan, Professor of Marketing at the ISEC School of Management. So, as dedicated educators, Colin McClure of the University of Alabama at Birmingham, Red Epler of Old Dominion University at Diva Ranga Rajan from ISEC School of Management bring real world experience to sales classrooms through immersed teaching, AI powered training, and practical skill building initiatives. Collectively, their research spans the latest trends in B2B sales, sales technology, and sales management, with a focus on advancing scholarship and industry practice in the rapidly evolving sales landscape. So, thank you, Colleen, Red, and Diva. Thank you so much for joining here. And the stage is yours to tell us like what is happening with artificial intelligence and sales in your last research.
All right. David, you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. So, thank you so much, Alejandro, and for all of you tuning in as well. This is a project that Colleen, Rhett, myself, and actually there's another colleague of ours who could not make it today, Lorian Schmidt, who's my colleague here. So, I'm based in Paris, France, and my colleague Lorian is based also here. So, this is actually across the pond or ocean collaboration. Again, the power of technology in at least trying to bridge capabilities and knowledge, and that's something that we also wanted to stress as well. So it's a real honor for us to actually be sharing our insights, and we again want to thank Alejandro and all the people who reached out to us and said, "Hey, we actually thought that our paper would just be read by 4 people or 5 people, and to actually have people from industry say that they would also like to know more about this research is really, really great news." So essentially what we have over the next 25 to 30 minutes is actually sharing some insights about our research, but more in terms of setting the stage for saying, why was this a topic of interest at all in the first place? And again, then taking you through what we actually did in our research. And then, of course, maybe if there are question and answers, answer them as well. And all three of us are going to be talking. And I just want to say that I have around 3 slides, which I'll be talking about. So essentially, bear with me for the first 3 slides. Of course, if you count the first slide, which I hopefully Colleen, since she's controlling it, if you would be kind enough to put up the presentation, the first stage is more or less, the first slide is, well, it's 4 slides actually. The first slide is actually our names and our where we work at. So essentially, yes. And I also want to specifically thank Alejandro for not calling me a diva. I think the only person who can call me a diva is my wife. The other people, it's Deva essentially, right? So thank you so much, Colleen. If you would be great if you could just slide on to the next slide, right?
Mhm.
Now, let me tell you how we exactly got started on this, right? The idea of AI. Again, for most of us, AI has been around for a long time, but specifically November 2022 was when essentially the whole world actually got to know the power of ChatGPT when OpenAI came and talked about ChatGPT. It's not that things were not happening before. And as you will see soon, that when Colleen and Rhett later on take you through the different aspects of what is available out there. But for us, for the general public, the idea of what it means to use AI kind of burst into the scene in November 2022. Now, does that mean that salespeople were not facing challenges? Actually, not necessarily. Things have been evolving for quite some time right now. And essentially, what we have is the current scenario that the salespeople face today. And this does not matter whether you're going to be in a normal kind of organization or you're going to be in a SaaS kind of organization or a more traditional organizations. What you'll see is your customers are becoming more and more empowered because they're not necessarily waiting for your salespeople to go and reach out to them, right? Essentially, then you're also dealing with multiple personas. For those of you familiar with the company, the ABM company, account-based marketing company, 6sense, they say there are anywhere between 11 to 20 people involved in the customer's decision-making units. So which means that you're going to have multiple personas to deal with. But when you have multiple personas, nobody wants to make a decision that would make them look like they may have made the wrong choice. So everybody becomes very, very risk averse. Now, when everybody becomes risk averse, essentially the sales cycle times tend to become longer. And of course, in some instances, it would also mean that traditionally customers who would purchase would put off and would postpone purchases because they would not want to take risks as well, right? And of course, you do all this, and suddenly what happens is then you have something like a COVID that comes up. Then we had the whole shocks that is happening in terms of the supply chain contagion that happened way back in 2021. And then, of course, you have the geopolitical situations happening across the world right now, all of them making it harder and harder for customers to make the right kind of choice. And essentially, what this has meant is that the salespeople now have to deal with a lot of factors that are beyond their control. And of course, one of the things that happened as well is that when COVID struck, and that was pretty much where a lot of organizations decided to go wholly digital in a lot of things. And essentially, you saw a splurge of tools that were being used to actually help salespeople go in. And if you take a look at the idea of digital transformation, that was actually, again, it was happening before, but COVID was a kind of a catalyst which essentially started this whole trend of salespeople having multiple tools to help them actually reach out to their customers, right? And to the point where right now, if you take a look at an average salesperson in an organization, they have to open up anywhere between 11 to 15 different platforms to get their job done, right? And AI is powering almost everything. So essentially, the scenario is the world is becoming more complex for salespeople. Technology is making it available for them to be using it, but of course, it comes with a lot of changes that happen. So we said, given all these scenarios, given the fact that each of these digital technologies comes with data that can be processed and can be analyzed and can be used to actually help salespeople, the question is AI now going to play a much more important role? And if so, how would it play a role for salespeople, right? Now, contrast this to Colleen, the next slide, please. Contrast this to that was actually way back in 2022. And again, if you take a look at recent work by ZoomInfo, and this is 2025, right? It's been 2 years of AI. But what is staggering is despite the possibility of having a lot of data available and with more increasing computing powers of using AI and new things like ChatGPT-5 and all these kind of things coming up, AI use in sales still lags behind how other functions within an organization use sales, right? So essentially, AI is predicted to use 60% of sales tasks by 2028, but what kind of tasks is the main question, right? Of course, you can do 60% of the tasks, but if 60% of the tasks is mostly at the top of the sales funnel, and not necessarily throughout the funnel, that again begs the question, where is AI being used and how is it being used as well, right? So of course, there are more questions than actually answers. And we were pretty much thinking along the lines of what does it mean for us? And so Colleen, the next slide. So we started digging into this idea of what is AI? And you'll see, we apologize for the small print, but I'm guessing that you'll have access to all of the presentations afterwards. What you actually see is that the idea of artificial intelligence has evolved over the years. And if you try and take a look at it, you see that evolve over actually three aspects. One is we talked about machine languages, which is much more into the kind of what past data do we actually have? And based on past data that we have, how can we take a look at it? How can we learn from this? And how can we maybe help predict what's going to happen in the future? Right. But then you started having computing powers going up. Then we started going into more into NLP, which is natural language processing, which eventually gave rise to more LLMs, large language models, where we go from the whole idea of AI now helping automate certain tasks based on machine learning or natural language processing to more generative AI, where it could actually start augmenting. Now, while we're presenting our work based on what we did in our paper last year, we all know that the way AI and technology is evolving, it's evolving so rapidly that one of our other fellow colleagues is actually working on things like agentic AI, where essentially you can actually have AI which has moved on to the point where it can actually simulate sort of rather simple tasks associated with what salespeople and service people would do. But essentially, what we saw was that there were different types of AI. And again, we have the machine learning, we have the automation, and then we have the augmentation. And we wanted to try and see how it is being used in sales. So, with this being the background, I'll now pass it on over to my colleagues who will pretty much tell you what we did in our study.
All right, thank you, Deva. So essentially, our research, we did some qualitative interviews with some experts in the field, about 18 different experts, all different various experience in the field, different levels within their organization. We really just wanted to understand what does AI, how does it impact every level of the organization? So the salespeople at the individual level, the sales managers, the organization as a whole, as well as the customers, trying to understand their AI side of things as well. So we were really just trying to understand, as David mentioned, what is their current application of AI? What tasks is it actually doing? What are some of the trade-offs associated with this technology? And then understand their perspectives on where AI is going in the future for sales specifically. So all of these tables that I'm going to share briefly here are all in our paper that Alejandro shared in the invitation, but I'm happy to share this slide deck as well. I know there's a lot of information on this, but I kind of wanted to highlight some very interesting or some really cool stuff that we found from our interviews here as we go through. So I'll kind of highlight those as we go through this. So starting off with the salesperson side of things. So again, we looked at each of those AI types and just tried to understand what is AI doing for each one at different levels of the sales process. So that's over here on this left-hand side. And so as David mentioned, most of the AI usage that we are seeing so far is at the top of that sales funnel. They're qualifying leads, potentially gathering information about potential leads or making that initial contact for our salespeople. But what's really interesting is that a lot of the folks we talked to were really interested in where AI is coming in later in this process. So kind of right through here. So how can AI be used in the presentation for a salesperson, kind of being a partner in that, creating personalized content as they're presenting it. If you're in the middle of a negotiation and you have objections coming from your customer side, how is AI being a tool or a partner for you? Is it helping you come up with ideas for what to cross-sell, how to overcome those objections and different things like that? And then even with the closing side of things, how can it actually help with the closing piece of it and even potentially following up with that as well. So some really cool stuff coming out of this side of it. And I know I'm really interested to see kind of where AI comes next later in the sales funnel. But obviously each of these things comes with its own challenges as well. So with AI, it's great at automating. It can do a lot, but it's never going to take over the salesperson themselves. So the relationship that the salesperson has with the customer, that will be inherently within the person and between those people there. So how can we actually capitalize that as salespeople? What am I doing extra to kind of capitalize on that relationship and make that stronger and better with AI as a partner rather than AI taking over that relationship?
Hey, Colleen, can I say something on that? So I remember when we did these interviews, it really was right when ChatGPT had come out and everybody was so excited, and it was almost like I mean, there still is kind of a mania about all of this, but it was like AI is going to replace all frontline salespeople. And there were people making claims, and I can see why they made it. I'm not knocking them at all, but the idea was that it was going to like take over any phone, like an SDR or any roles like that were just totally done. And I know hiring has slowed down for sure, but I think that's relates more to economic conditions and the pace of hiring, like right after COVID, than it totally replacing these roles, because I deal with a lot of students and companies and they're still getting hired a lot into phone-heavy SDR entry-level roles. So I would say that it's really interesting to look at some of this, I guess, a couple years later and see how things have progressed, and some things have and have not come to fruition. And it's really been something that we've been pretty fascinated, and we're all students of this as well still. So it's exciting.
All right, so then moving into the sales manager side of things. So Rhett, thank you for kind of teeing that up for me.
Yeah.
A lot of what's coming for the sales managers is how do they train these salespeople? Are they training them differently? If AI is helping with the order processing, all the inputting data, handling a lot of the CRM side of things, how are these sales managers training their employees to be better salespeople? So how can they teach them the communication skills, the relationship, a lot of those soft skills are becoming more and more important for salespeople now. So how can they utilize AI to be better with that? And same thing with these managers, they can potentially use AI to help train themselves to be better managers. So, hey, have you reached out to this salesperson in the last couple of weeks? We've noticed this trend with them. So little things like that, but really powerful tools, I think, coming for the sales management side of things. So obviously these sales managers also have their own accounts that they manage on top of being managers of sales teams. So they can also use this as well during that sales process. And then they can also use this for recruitment and hiring. We're seeing quite a bit of this right now, AI kind of running through resumes, looking for keywords and buzzwords and things like that. So really using this in this AI. So on these tables, the little diamond shapes are kind of, these were tools or ways that AI was being used currently in their firms. And then the circle ones were more for where they saw it coming in the future. So again, as Rhett mentioned, this was a couple of years ago when we started doing this. So some of this has changed and adapted and grown. So it's really interesting to see what the next step is for this. Moving into the organization side of things. So as we were looking at AI for this level, was really looking at the capabilities of the firm. So how does it help with strategic management? How does it help with external stakeholders and those partnerships outside of the firm? And then operationally, what does AI help with there? So obviously, operationally, AI is great to help be more efficient and recommend things as we kind of go through. But these Salesforce structures are starting to change as well. So how can AI help adapt these structures? How can they potentially recommend new channel partners or relationships, or really dive deep into these relationships that firms are having across the channel to understand what's going on and see how those relationships need to change? And AI is also great at understanding kind of the RFPs that come through and easily comparing potential customers or channel partners that are coming through as well to understand what that looks like. And then finally, from the customer side of things, this one is also very interesting. I come from the buying side myself, so this is kind of where we've started this focus here, but AI is not just on the sales side, the buyers are starting to use it as well. So most of the work that the buyers are doing comes way before they ever talk to a salesperson. So not only can salespeople use AI to help them qualify leads, the buyers can use this to help them qualify their potential suppliers as well. So they get all these proposals, all these different people contacting them about wanting to sell them their product. They can easily use AI to help with this and use it for recommendations, or if they're dealing with a negotiation with a salesperson, how can they come up with different objections or questions, and how does this fit with what we're trying to sell here? So some really interesting stuff coming through here. So as I said, we can obviously share these slides with you all, with Alejandro, but all of these are also in the paper that he shared as well. So again, this is kind of where everything was when we did this, but I'm going to hand it off to Rhett to kind of talk about what's coming next.
Yeah, thank you, Colleen. And I appreciate that you did a great job of summarizing everything. So I'm in the process of, I try to stay pretty up to date on the literature, although it's hard because so much comes out, and I listen to a lot of stuff and I read a lot of practitioner things, and I do my best to stay on top of this. But I will say that I'm learning as I go along too, and it just seems like there's new stuff all the time. So I will give you the best, to my knowledge, of what's going on right now, and with the caveat that it changes all the time. So in the interviews we're doing right now, we're more thinking about how to build good AI habits, and I guess implicit in that statement is the idea that they're obviously using AI. So what are the ways that they can build good habits around it? Because I don't know if anybody read the MIT report, but in the MIT report that came out about a month ago, a lot of these companies are very concerned about like rogue ChatGPT usage, and just, you know, we saw that in some of the interviews. There were people that were, I don't know, they just didn't understand the infrastructure, and they were inputting sensitive information into OpenAI. And I think that a few years later, it's acknowledged that, you know, you want to keep proprietary information in house, and you're starting to see probably the development of small language models, and, you know, that's obviously going to be more available to the bigger players, of course, but it's pretty exciting. But what I will say, what I'm garnering from the interview so far, and also I have a friend that was just at Dreamforce, and I intend to go next year, but I will say that everybody that I've talked to thus far, and these have all been managers, they've all been talking about what Salesforce is doing, and they're really excited about the CRM possibilities. And I think that has been one of the main themes thus far, is that Salesforce is just kind of all over this and on top of this, and they're being able to do stuff with CRM that they just really wasn't possible before. And this is helping with things like forecasting, or just basic. Somebody showed me on a call yesterday, you know, how they were using some in-house AI to look at some data so they could better tell a story to their, you know, operations, and really certainly the people that are senior to them, and just, you know, how they're driving efficiencies and things of that nature. And I think the other thing that we're thinking about is that managers are being tasked with training a lot of their salespeople on this, much like Colleen had just said. And that this is becoming a pretty prominent theme in these interviews as well, is that, you know, there's LMS or content providers that are, you know, working with the companies and with the managers, and the managers are now being tasked with training people on these, I guess we would call them good AI habits. So what that looks like in practice is teaching salespeople how to use AI. They've all stressed the idea, like, we do not want them to create AI slop. We don't want them to create anything of that nature. We want them to use this in conjunction. And that means help with writing emails, or help with just, again, looking at data sets and things that were not, without analytical skills, might not have been real possible for people before. But now you're seeing, I think it's leveling the playing field in some way. And to me, it's quite exciting. What comes next? I mean, they mentioned the agentic AI earlier, and if you listen to anything or read anything, that's kind of been, Salesforce has been talking about this. You know, I remember in the spring talking to students about agentic AI. So I think that is probably, you know, the next big thing. And it really is evolving at a rapid pace. And I will also say, the other thing is, I really enjoy talking to practitioners. So if anybody on this call wants to talk to any of us, please reach out. I just like learning about this. I'll give you, I won't say the company, but one company yesterday was telling me how some of their operations people are using AI glasses while they repair and fix things, so they can fix them in a more effective and an efficient manner. So I think you're seeing efficiencies like that are being driven. And I don't know, I mean, we can look at the stock market and kind of look, I mean, some people are saying it's a bubble. I really don't know. I'm not qualified to make that call, but I think you're seeing some pretty intense optimism around efficiencies, whether on the labor side or just on learning how to do things better. And I've really enjoyed getting to learn about some of this up front and close with these sales managers. And the next phase of this project is going to be to talk to salespeople about their own personal usage of, you know, Gen AI, and how they're building good habits around it. But I think that's where a lot of the research might be headed, is just learning how to use this more effectively. And, you know, as a sales research community, we're doing our best to stay on top of this. But again, I will say that reach out to us. A lot of us want to be very active with practitioners and learning. So if you have any ideas or just want to chat with any of us, please reach out. And I think we're about at time, so I will kick it back over to Alejandro.
Oh, I want to add one thing really quickly before we go. So one of the things for us as educators is making sure that our students are very comfortable with this technology before they leave our institutions. So a lot of companies are trying to institute this AI and implement it at all different stages. And we usually hear a lot of pushback from people that have been doing sales jobs or any jobs in an organization for a while. So getting the next generation comfortable with this technology, letting them play with it, letting them explore with it. But on top of that, having them understand that they need to trust but verify the information that they're getting out of these tools. So do they know when to check it and validate what's going on with it, to kind of avoid, as Rhett mentioned, some of that AI slop, and to create those good habits as they're going through. They're not just trusting it blindly and then sending that information over to their customers. They're doing their due diligence to check it as they go. The way I phrase AI, it's kind of it's an intern that you have with you. So you're not going to send an intern out into the workforce to just do things without any training or guidance. You need to constantly be checking them and guiding them along the way to get the answer or the solution that you're looking for. So that's kind of how I'm teaching my AI it to my students to kind of let them keep training it and utilizing it, because it's never going to stop learning, and the more it learns, the better it is for them.
If I also want to quickly end to what is being said out here as well, I think the key to all this is, yes, AI can do a lot of things, but the question that all of you must also factor in is, how is AI going to change the nature of your sales and your work processes, right? And I think what's going to happen, the key to all this is two things. One is, if you happen to be in a leadership position, you have to be very clear about what AI is going to be doing and what AI is not going to be doing, because it could lead to a lot of misconceptions and all the kind of they're looking at AI as a silver bullet, saying that we don't have the necessary capabilities or skills and AI is going to fill up the gap. What's going to end up happening is that if you don't have proper processes which AI can come and improve, you're going to have a kind of a bubble that is going to be bust. Everything that Rhett was talking about is going to become vital. So if you are in a leadership position, understanding how AI is going to interact with your traditional work processes and how that's going to shape is something that you need to be thinking about. Similarly, if you happen to be a middle manager or a manager or a frontline manager who is caught between a rock and a hard place, that is, you have your top managers saying, we're going to be investing in AI, but you as a sales leader are tasked with making sure that, yes, there is going to be a lag between the time you introduce AI and your salespeople start either selling more or become more efficient. But who is going to be hitting the targets? Who's going to be hitting it? If your salespeople struggle with using AI, no matter what happens, your managers are not going to push AI on their sales teams. And we all know that salespeople only do what they're measured on. So please do not forget that this has repercussions for all of the things. And you absolutely need to know, depending upon if you're a sales leader or a sales manager, that your role is going to become vital. And if you're a sales manager, you have to be very clear in understanding how AI is going to change the way salespeople are doing their jobs. Because if you don't understand that, salespeople will not hit their targets. If they don't hit their targets, they will be held accountable, and they would actually blame things on AI and stop using AI. So essentially, this is not anything new. I'm going to leave it with a term that was made famous way back in 1987 by a Nobel Prize winner in economics, called the productivity paradox. Essentially, at that time in 1987, the big thing was when computers were introduced in the workplace. And essentially, Robert Solow, he was actually the economist, he actually said, well, I see computers everywhere, but I don't see the productivity numbers going up. And this trend has repeated with every technology that has been deployed with the Salesforce. It started with CRM. The word is still out, whether the jury is still out, whether CRM implementation gives rise to a lot of benefits. And AI, if you do not want AI to go the same way, you have to manage the change process extremely carefully, because otherwise there's going to be an over-reliance on AI, and you're going to look at it as a silver bullet without necessarily fixing your sales process and understanding your sales process as well. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to add on top of what Rhett and Colleen were saying as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for listening to our presentation. As we mentioned, this paper is out there for you. We can obviously share these slides as well if you'd like, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have for us.
Great presentation as always. Thank you so much. Really insightful. Also, your paper was really nice, and really happy to answer the questions that the public could have. So if you have some, please write down in the comments in the platform where you are watching this webinar. So far, there's one comment actually that is talking about recent graduates that are likely to adopt and leverage the AI investments. So far, thinking about that, so how do you see the new graduates? Like all the industry in sales is changing with AI, the processes, still there's no like clear path of how to adopt AI, but a lot of graduates are joining the market. So how do you see the or what are your recommendations for them?
So I would say I touched on this a little bit, but this next generation has a really unique opportunity because they've been around this technology or just technology their entire lives, whether it's their laptop, their phone, they've had it right on hand whenever they needed it. So they can be the ones to kind of be the champion for this new technology and these changes coming through. As David mentioned, you need to have a very clear change management process when you're implementing new technologies. And if you get somebody kind of on the bottom level, like the individual salesperson that's all for AI, here's how it can help, and they can show their team on what it can do to make them better, it's much more likely to get adopted by other people on the sales force and in the organization because they've been able to see it and it's coming from a bottom up kind of mentality versus the CEO throwing AI on top and saying, here you go, we're putting AI on everything. So I think this next generation is a really cool and great opportunity to be those champions for this technology.
Let me build on that as well. I think there are a couple of things that we need to take into consideration, the roles that they'll take on. So for example, if you try and take a look at if I am fresh out of university, most of the time they're going to go into entry-level sales jobs, right? Essentially, which then means that there is going to be an onboarding process. And in the onboarding process is what becomes very important about what is being done in the sales enablement process at that point in time. So typically you will need to have things like, how do I make a pitch? So specific training programs about using AI enabled coaches, right? For example, automatic coaches, you can actually go pitch your product or your service, and then essentially it gives you feedback about how you need to make those changes, right? That's one thing that they will have to learn to do. The second thing, of course, what they'll also have to learn to do is they'll also have to learn to make sure that they exactly know how to write certain prompts that will help them in their job. But they should also be told about very carefully how to put and write these prompts. Because if you happen to work for a very big organization, you might have your own GPT, Chat GPT, or OpenAI enabled. You might have a partnership with OpenAI, and you might have a Chat GPT or a Bard, or not Bard, Gemini, right? Gemini or Anthropic specifically for your organization, where you can actually input information and not worry about the information going on. So you should be told the importance of that. The third thing, which is going to become very important, is they need to understand that when they're doing this, there's an ethical issue involved there as well. So essentially, if they're going to be talking, for example, there's this whole idea of conversation analytics that is saying that if I have a conversation with a client, I can go back and analyze what went right, what went wrong. But then that means that your customers or those interactions are going to be recorded. So you should also be very careful about ethics in terms of what needs to be done there as well. And of course, the last but not the least as well is that they should have more analytical skills, which is again something that many people tend to forget. Is the AI is only going to be as good as telling you these are the kind of things that you can do, and you have to start analyzing it, saying that, okay, this is the feedback that I'm getting, and how am I going to change the way I'm going to interact or the way I'm going to upskill myself to use this? And that calls for a different kind of mindset. And I personally think, and I'm sure that Rhett and Colleen have their own thoughts. Those people who know AI can be used, but how to make sense of it, how can I improve myself? Those are the ones who are going to be more successful than, unfortunately, a large set of young students who just take the easy way out by thinking ChatGPT is going to answer everything for them. And by the way, when I say ChatGPT, I'm sure that some of them have their own preferences towards Gemini or Anthropic or Claude, whatever it is, right? That's pretty much my thoughts on this. I don't know about Colleen or Rhett.
Yeah, I'll be real brief. I think I agree with everything you all have said, and also with the comment. And I think that it becomes pretty incumbent upon us as educators to really help students, really learn to understand when and where to use these things, best practices, and things of that nature. But that also keeps us fresh on it too, like learning it. But that's why I really like this, because it's happening in real time, and we can look and we can kind of learn together. So I would just say, yeah, I think that's focus, at least in sales. In most disciplines I've seen, people are really wanting to figure out how to get students to use this. So I think that can be kind of a misconception that universities don't want students to learn this. I don't think we don't want them to use it to write papers or things like that. We want them to learn how to use it to just be more efficient. I would say that's been the attitude I've seen thus far. So I would say that was a very great comment from the person.
Yeah. And I would say something we're also trying to do at our university is teach them how to prompt good. So how do you give that intern directions? The more context you can give, an example of what you're doing, if we can give them those directions ahead of time, they're much more likely to develop those good habits that Rhett mentioned and get better answers and know that they need to teach it and train it. And then they learn kind of how to prompt the AI, what they can and can't ask from it. So I will do examples in class and show them what a good AI answer is versus not based on the prompts that I'm giving it. So letting them see that side of things. So I want making sure they're comfortable with the AI, because we still have many students in our university that don't want to use it because they're afraid they're going to get flagged for ethical or plagiarism, things like that. But letting them know that they can use this tool. It is a tool that's sticking around for a while. It can make them more efficient and productive, but letting them know when and how to use it. And as David mentioned, to be transparent on when they're using it as well, for myself and for the other professors, or if they're in a sales negotiation with their customers as well.
But there's one more thing, Alejandro, which is something that we absolutely have to keep in mind. Once they start working, your AI is only as good as the data that was put into it. So which then means that CRM usage is going to become extremely vital, right?
Yes.
And what you see is that what you do not have if your organization that you're working for does not have the discipline to have your CRM level data. Now, if you want to go into agentic AI, it's CRM plus ERP plus all the different kinds of data sources to help give one single view of the customer. So for example, Salesforce invested a lot in acquiring a company called MuleSoft. The idea is if I'm going to be preparing for a call with a client, then I can get a 360-degree view of the client based on past data, current data in no time. Now, imagine MuleSoft powered by Einstein AI. So, but the key to all this is the quality of the data that you have. And that quality of the data comes from your visit reports. It comes from linking it to your ERP systems. It comes back into your issues that you have with your ServiceNow or all the kinds of platforms for service. But if you don't have that integration, it becomes a big issue, which is why the question we should all be asking is not about sales students coming out. The question is, are sales managers ready for this? Because sales managers, if they do not insist that the fresh graduates coming out, take the time to input data in CRM, if there's no discipline, AI is going to give you garbage in, garbage out. And that is what Rhett was talking about, that the MIT report that said that AI might actually be hallucinating. And essentially what's going to happen is that you just need 2 or 3 bad instances where AI did not work for a salesperson. And then the idea is that AI does not work at all. That happened with CRM in the past. And if not done carefully, but that's why I think the question we should all be thinking about is, yes, young minds can be trained, but the question is not about the very young minds. The question is about the people who are in sales and are leading the teams, which need to focus a lot more on the discipline that comes along with it.
Yes. Agreed.
Perfect. Great answer. So actually, we have so much more questions. We have a comment about great insights. Thank you for sharing.
I know Jen. Yeah,
Thanks,
Jen's great. Hey, Jen.
Perfect. Also, we have, where is the paper located at?
So this is at the Journal of Personal Selling and Sales Management. If you'd like I'm not sure if it's open source to get, but if you email any of us or message us on LinkedIn, we can get a copy of that.
Yep.
Perfect.
So yes, Stanley, just email one of us and we could just PDF you a copy. No problem.
Then we have, what are you hearing from these companies? They want students to learn in the classroom, sales plus AI specifically.
So I would say for this one, it's getting them comfortable with the technology. So for me, when I'm teaching, I try not to get too school or tool specific, because so many companies use all these different platforms out there, but just letting them know what is generative AI. Here's a couple different examples, and here's how you can use it, what to use it for, what not to. But I think David touched on this. It's those that can make sense of it. And as I mentioned before, those soft skills are becoming more and more important. AI can create a great visual for you and give you all the trends of what's going on in your data, but you still have to be the one to present those findings to your customers and convince them on what's going on. So I teach an analytics class, which, you know, everybody gets the same answer sometimes, the analytics, but what that means for you and how you explain it and what you do next is going to come from the creativity of the salesperson. And AI is not going to ever be as creative as we are as humans. So how do we teach creativity? How do we teach curiosity and help them dig through different things to come up with creative solutions?
Yeah, I think that people are, it's kind of interesting. They're stressing communication skills and like emotional intelligence. All of these things are now, they were always important, but I think they're even more important now, just being able to connect and have a conversation and present. So it's almost a paradox that the rise of all this technology has made communication that much more important, but it really has. So yeah.
I think the fact is that your customers are also expecting better interactions with the salespeople, right? That's the whole challenge. And that's always been the issue with any advance in technology, which has always been the same technology that you have access to, your customers have access to as well, which then means their expectations go up, right? Essentially, and if their expectations go up, the question is, are your people ready for it? And of course, AI can help you get there, but if there's no underlying understanding of what it is that we want AI to do for us, it's going to be a big issue, right? And I think building up on what we had Rhett as well as Colleen talk about it, is that I think you should take a look at it from two perspectives, right? One perspective is on how does the sales process look like? So that's a normal sales process all the way from how do I do lead generation, lead qualification, taking it through. The second one is building your own skill capabilities. That's where you take a look at the traditional sales enablement space, right? So essentially, how do I onboard my employees? How do I give them the skills, right? They're two different tracks. So what you'll have to do is that in the classroom, that's what we do. For those of you who are not aware, Rhett, Colleen, and I used to work at a couple of universities in the US in the past, is we actually have sales centers which have a variety of classes. Right. And essentially there are classes that looks at selling. There's advanced professional selling based on if you're going to be working in a specific industry or not. And now each of these classes is going to come with an AI component to it. Right. So I could be teaching a class on basic sales skills, and we can take a look at how AI is getting used. But there's a class that I used to teach called sales technology, where we talked about sales enablement. A new extension of sales would be customer success. And each of these are roles where specifically AI is going to play a different role. So you need to understand that, and from a sales management perspective. So we are training our students depending not just on what they're going to do right now, but we're giving them the basics of them becoming managers at some point in time. And that's hopefully not that far away, because there's research that says that students with the basic sales training program tend to hit the ground much faster, hit the ground running much faster, and consequently tend to become leaders a little bit faster than the others, right? Of course, this has been proven. It's not just me making it up. So we need to train them on all that. So we actually have a curriculum specifically looking at all this as well. So again, for those of you interested, you should reach out to Rhett or Colleen. I'm now based in France, where we don't have as much focus on these as well. But I think that's, again, something that we want to add, that there's a lot of things happening, at least stateside in the US, at universities, about training the students on different aspects of sales, sales management, key account management, and how AI is getting used there as well.
Perfect. Let's go to the last. There are like two more comments. Like if you are a student, you can get AI training from IBM.
Students need to know how the advantages they have as students. Like you can get so much. Please, students, there's so much available to you as a student that when you graduated, then they want money for it. So use all of it now. So yeah, like there's no students listening to this, of course, but they would.
We suggest Salesforce Trailhead, and Salesforce Trailhead also has Einstein. So essentially, we tell our students that they would do it. HubSpot has a free academy as well. So essentially, HubSpot also has things which, again, HubSpot, of course, you have Hootsuite and stuff like that, but HubSpot is much more CRM and AI kind of toolkit based. They should also be looking, and well, if they take a look at it, there are other sales enablement platforms that can also be used as well. So, but Salesforce Trailhead is very well known as well.
And hey, Stanley, thank you. I just put that into my browser. I'm gonna look at that skills build thing and probably integrate some of that into my advanced sales class for the spring.
And I will say a lot of these tools, AI tools that are looking for recruiting and hiring now, are looking for some of these keywords of these trainings. So do you know what Salesforce is? Have you done any of these little micro certifications or micro credentials? So that's something we try to include in some of our classes if we can, but always encourage students to go outside of it because we can only cover so much during our semester. We want them to keep learning and keep building their skills as much as possible.
Sure. He's looking for email at the bottom.
Alejandro, if you wouldn't mind sharing the slides, it has all of our contact information on there.
Yes. Can you share again the presentation, please?
Yes, give me 1 second. Oh, sorry, 1 second.
By the way, we invite everybody to also check the certifications that we have at Silicon Valley Certification Hub. This is more like for executives and mid managers, and they are not technical. So it's not about tools, it's more about how AI they can apply for their work, for their strategy. Like as Deva mentioned, there's a lot of shift in the industry, mid managers, executives, that they need to figure out how AI can work for their companies, and we can help them on that. You can reach out to me. Good. Antonio asked for the emails. Thank you. Are here, and just comment must have an LLM with your industry language. Maybe it's a question. What do you think? Like, do you think it should?
Wouldn't those be SL? I mean, if they're industry specific, they might even be small language models. It may be idiosyncratic. I don't know
but just training the models.
I agree. For sure.
Yeah, training the models with your specific lingo and jargon is going to be very important. So, what is this acronym mean in your industry versus the electrical industry or medical? You need to give it that training ahead of time so it can learn and do these things for you. So, yes, thank you, Stanley, for sharing that.
Indeed. But companies are doing that as well. Huh? If you work for companies, they have their own small SLMs. And even otherwise, you can actually, I do a lot of work with corporate trainings and stuff like that. And I was doing it for a medical device company. And I just went to ChatGPT and I said, give me the specifications for one of their products, literally on ChatGPT. And I also said for sales, I said, give me a pre-call plan for this particular product. And I'm not kidding you. It gave me literally based on the kind of product, who I'm going to be talking to in the customer's organization. And I can literally download a pre-call plan activity, which of course can be plugged into your CRM system, right? So essentially, if you can have your company then say, for our specific organization, we're going to have something specific, it is just going to make it a lot more powerful there. But then again, that goes into the point that Alejandro was mentioning. That's not the skill set of an individual salesperson. It's what an organization wants to invest in. That is the big issue there as well.
Perfect. Well, I think that that's all for today's session. Thank you so much, Colleen, Red, Deva, for your time, your knowledge, your great presentation, the paper, all what you are doing for understanding what's the future of sales AI, like the industry. Really, really excited to see what's coming next. And thank you so much for sharing with all of us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your great questions.
Yeah. Have a nice day. Bye, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.